Thank you. So I'm pretty sure this is what Jimmy Fallon must feel like on a nightly basis. So I'm going to take some getting used to on this. Before I start, though, I want to tell a little story because it's been kind of funny to me as I've gone about the day. As with many of these presentations, things are getting done last minute, and so it was last night at 9 o'clock whenever Arnaud finally got our presentation in, and it was via email. And that's the last slide, by the way, not the first one, just in case. But when he got the presentation, he wrote back, he said, "What, no video?" And I knew the way that he said it, that we were going to be the only people that didn't have a video today. So I apologize in advance. Your entertainment value is going to purely come from my charisma and sense of humor, and nothing more. So with that, if we can cue up the presentation. There we go. Okay. So like it says, we're going to talk about the evolution of stadium design. I'm getting no love here, guys. Right and left, right? While they're figuring that out, if we can go back to the beginning of the presentation. So I work for HOK. We're a global design firm. We've got about 23 offices across the country. We have sports-specific designers in San Francisco, Kansas City, New York, and London, and we've got some things underway to expand that group into other places across the country and across the globe. One of the things that we have is pretty much a core design philosophy, is that we want to provide a solution that is specific to the needs of our clients. We don't want to give our clients something that everybody else has. We want to give them something that everybody else will want. So with that, here we go. Okay. We're on. So, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the MLS and the NFL and kind of compare and contrast where these two leagues are in the evolution of the league itself, but also in the evolution of the design of the facilities that represent these leagues. Originally, we were going to talk about compare and contrast between Avaya Stadium for the San Jose Earthquakes and Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the Atlanta Falcons and Atlanta United FC. But this got much more interesting when we started to think about it in terms of the leagues and where they're at in their evolution. So you can see by the demographics, MLS is a relatively new league, 22 years old. So they're still babies, and when you look at that compared to the NFL or the NBA or others. Average price of a team, $185 million. What's most important, I think, on this slide, and will be more telling as we take this further, is the number of fans that are under 45 is almost at 60%, and women tally almost 60% too, and their ratings are skyrocketing, so they're a league on the rise for sure. When you look at the NFL, a much more mature league, almost 5 times as old, 96 years. The average franchise value over $2 billion. But one of the things that we're seeing is that the demographics are telling an interesting story for these two leagues. When you look at the millennials, the kids that are younger, the Gen Xers like me, that's only about 32% of their fan base. And for a league that wants to be on the growth side, that's not doing real good. The other thing is that, only getting about 45% of women. And from a rating standpoint, we heard a lot about it this year. They blamed it on the election. They talked about other things. But the ratings were down. So that's something that the NFL is very much attuned to and are looking for ways to, climb out of that. So, we firmly believe that, how these leagues, go about facing their challenges is immediately reflected in the buildings that they design, because the physical world, the built world, is what engages their fans the most, and the experience that they have as part of that has a foundation within that physical built world. So to jump into this evolutionary tale of the MLS, okay, there's really four sort of zones that we're seeing that these new facilities or facilities in general for these franchises fall into. The first being the borrowed facility. So this is the classic example of a team that's newly formed. They don't have money to do a capital outlay to build a building, so they're going to go play in somebody else's building. And a lot of times they do that in ballparks, for example, sometimes in larger NFL buildings. And the challenges really end up being, well, it's a ballpark and soccer isn't played on a diamond, so we got a lot of challenges there. Or it's somebody else's ballpark, and so all of the branding and all of the fan recognition really flows back to the home team and really has nothing to do with the renters that are coming into play there. So it makes for a really difficult situation. But throughout the evolution, the teams have scratched and clawed and grown, and some of them have moved into, if I look back at Kansas City Wizards, which are now Sporting KC in the town that I'm in right now, they started in Communion America Ballpark. Then they went out and they played where the Chiefs play, in Arrowhead Stadium. Now, the challenge there was you're drawing 15,000 people to a 70,000 seat venue. So that doesn't work very well for them to build their brand and their fan demographic. But in some cases like Gillette Stadium, New England Revolution, where you have same ownership, same building, things start to click a little bit. But now where we are in the genesis or in the evolution of this league is that they're getting their own purpose-built stadiums done. And it's happening time and again and time and again. And so I want to just go into and look at one example. This is Avaya Stadium. It's for the San Jose Earthquakes. It opened in 2015. This building really embodies where the MLS is in the evolution and development of their stadiums. They're reinforcing the brand of the MLS. They're reinforcing the brand of San Jose, the Quakes, and they're also responding to the demographics, what the people really want in a building like this. You can see by the architecture, it has a soccer-initiated feel to it, and it's also got what is probably one of the more important things in this and the growth of the league is the naming rights sponsorship. So somebody actually felt compelled enough and believed enough in the team and in the league that they were willing to put a sizable donation in place to brand a building like this. Some of the challenges, so when you look at the MLS, largely based in family, largely based in millennials, they like to be nomadic. If you've ever gone to a game with your 10-year-old son or daughter or your 6-year-old son or daughter, they can't sit still. And because that's a big demographic for the MLS, they become nomadic fans. So they want to have opportunities to view a game other than just from their seat. So this building created areas all throughout, 360 degrees around the building where you can get out of your seat, still pay attention to the game, still see what's going on, and give your son or daughter a little bit of a break. The other thing, when it comes to the millennial crowd, again, they're just as nomadic, but they don't have a child tethered to them. They got 6 of their buddies with them. So they want to get out, they want to walk around, they want to go grab a beer, they want to put up a selfie on Twitter. They want to do all sorts of things that aren't really about sitting in a chair and watching a sporting event. So one of the things that was a big feature to Avaya is this enormous outdoor bar. It was a place for you to go, chill, hang out, watch a game, grab a beer, take a call. I mean, these days, going to a sporting event isn't just about watching the game. It's about a lot of other things. It's about multiple distractions. We talked a lot about technology. Technology, I'm not going to go down that road, but obviously technology plays a big part in this. The other piece of this on the family side is that there's a 2-acre plaza, basically a festival zone, that's on the other side of this bar, and that's a 2-sided scoreboard. So again, an opportunity for the kids to go out and kick a soccer ball around at intermission, or to just take a break from the game and get out and do things, but also to start the fan engagement and the fan experience much earlier than just walking through the gates, and gives people a place to hang out and a reason to stick around. Again, looking at demographics, affordability is a big deal in the MLS. So when you start thinking about luxury boxes or loge boxes or club seats and the value of those, the demographic of families and millennials, it's about affordability. So this is a little bit more informal version of how you might go about carving out your little niche of the world in a space that you might pay a little extra for in order to have that premium experience, but still do it on an affordable budget. So all of those different things that were done in that building were really about reinforcing the brand of the MLS, reinforcing the brand of the Quakes, responding to the demographic differences that they have versus other leagues, and really setting a building in place and time that was appropriate for where the league is in the evolution and growth. Now, if we take this is a little bit different story because it's a little bit longer story. But if I just jump ahead a bit to the third column, the sports-specific facilities, the majority of those buildings in the NFL got built in the mid-90s to the early 2000s, okay? They were in direct rejection of the concrete donuts, the Riverfront Stadium, the Three River Stadium, the Kingdome, that were multi-purpose the phase before, that were baseball and football put together. It didn't do a really good job for either of them, but it was a civic building paid for by taxpayers that was really about keeping their professional franchises in the city that they were at. When you think about that, the MLS got their purpose-built buildings done 3 to 4 times quicker than the NFL did. And that to me is just astounding, that the adoption rate for that league has been that much quicker. And I think it's a little bit about the climate that we're in, and that sports, I mean, for me to be standing on this stage and talking to you, obviously sports and technology and those kind of things are incredibly important to people, but they are more so today than they were in the past. But if I go back, you see a very similar progression that we talked about to the MLS. The New York Jets played in the Polo Grounds, again, a ballpark, but that's where they got their start. And then I talked about the big kind of concrete donut, the civic platform that kept the buildings or attracted the franchises or attracted the expansion franchises of the NFL and Major League Baseball into their cities. And now we're in a different place, because if you look at those buildings that were built in the NFL from 1997, starting with the Washington Redskins, all the way through until mid-2000s, there were 15 franchises that got new buildings built in that time period. Of those 15, only 2 broke the mold. It was the Detroit Lions and it was the Houston Texans. And Texans just hosted the Super Bowl, so it's probably fresh on people's minds. But they were both indoor venues. Otherwise, all of the other buildings that got built in that time period were exterior, purpose-built, related exactly to the football field, related exactly to the pro forma of the football, the NFL football at that time, and they really weren't thinking about much else. They were rejecting a previous concept, and they were going all the way to the right to say, this is what we're going to do. We're the NFL. We're going to do this. So now, when you think about post-2006, you've had the Phoenix Cardinals. They built their indoor building, multi-purpose. You've had the Dallas Cowboys build theirs, multi-purpose. And the building that we're going to talk about a little bit here today is Mercedes-Benz. So this is a facility that will open up this July. Actually, the first event in this building is going to be for the Atlanta United FC. So it's going to be a soccer event that's in there first. It's a $1.5 billion structure. Largely paid for by Arthur Blank. There is limited taxpayer funding that's a part of that building, as is typical these days. It's unique. It is unlike anything else that's been done to date in the NFL world, and that's largely due to Arthur and where he wanted to go with it, but also some underlying overtones to that. He really wanted to create something that challenged the standards and set the standards and not just replicated what had been done with the Dallas Cowboys or the Phoenix Cardinals or others. He wanted to do something that was uniquely different, and he chose the architecture as a pathway to do that. So again, a very different looking building, unlike any other NFL building that's out there. But he had the added challenge, right? Because he was the owner of both the Falcons and the United FC Soccer Club. So how is he going to design and build a building that responded to the needs of two incredibly different franchises and two incredibly different leagues and do it successfully with things like capacity, scale, branding, all those things that I talked about when I talked about the earthquakes building were just as important in the conversation on this building as they were in that one. But this one's got two masters. It's got the NFL and their set of criteria, and it's got the MLS and their set of criteria. And I think that this building really represents where there's beginning to be a merger between the two. In this case, just by the image, you can see where the reduction of the house served as a branding element in order to say, hey, this is about the soccer club. This isn't about the Falcons. And you create transparency that breaks down the scale of the building by opening up the Oculus. And you've got the window to the city that you can see in the background there. So creating that. You create a low bowl that responds to both soccer and football in a really successful way. So you really start to design a building as though it's got multiple things in mind. Kind of like we were doing back in the 50s and 60s. But this time we chose a better partner because at least the pitches and the fields are rectangular. So we can maybe work around that a little better. And then you have to think about the demographic themselves, the fans. The fans are very different, as those initial slides really pointed out. So how do you do that? What's the way to go about doing that? Well, Arthur did something that a lot of the other NFL owners really didn't like. He brought street pricing into the building. So instead of paying $8 for a hot dog, you can pay $2, which is what you'd probably pay if you went to a 7-Eleven or Quick Trip or any other convenience store. And you can buy a commemorative Mercedes-Benz Stadium cup for $5 and go to the Coke machine that's out in the middle of the concourse and refill it at your leisure. Those things really respond to the family atmosphere, the way that you can actually afford to go to an event or a game in a building and not have to take a loan out to do it. So there are things like that that have been done within the building to make it more MLS friendly and less about the 96-year-old league that is the NFL. Kind of the last piece that I'll talk about here, and I'll try to get us back on time, is the design was ultimately critical to the draw too. He wanted something unique. He wanted something that was going to be a destination in and of itself, outside of just being a building where you went to a game or you came to a convention or you came to the SEC championship. He wanted a place that was a destination that you would go on a Tuesday after work just to go walk around it and check it out, because it's that unusual and unique and people want to be there and talk about it and be a part of it. And so the design played a critical role in this building being successful on all the levels that it's trying to be successful on. And so with that, I guess, a couple things to just ponder as we think about where this is going. I think that there's some really critical drivers that are pushing the evolution of stadium design. I've talked about most of them, but I'll recap. I think owners are owning more than one franchise these days, as Mercedes-Benz is an example of. Arthur owns 2 franchises. He wants to cater to both. He doesn't want to have to build 2 different buildings to do that. So the concept of multi-purpose is certainly something that's up front in everybody's mind in this. And not only that, but beyond the franchises. They want to be able to host the Super Bowl. They want to be able to host the SEC championship. They want to be able to host the college football playoff. They want to be able to host a bowl game. There's a myriad of events that drive the usage of a building, and event days play a huge part in that. The other is really buildings that start to address the desires, the whims, the needs of the next generation fan, and how the architecture and how the amenities really go a long way to do that. Ultimately, I believe is going to drive where these buildings go down the road. So with that, we're about out of time. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.